What's up, everybody? This is Brian here to tell you about our podcast, Bingetown TV. Our hosts include 7 best friends with a love for all things television. We cover a range of genres with a focus on fantasy and sci-fi, but also dip our feet into drama, horror, comedy, and pretty much anything we think is good television. We use the traditional deep dive formula for new live shows that are released week to week, but our calling card is our Rooks and Vets and Pitchtown TV series. Rooks and Vets pairs 2 of our hosts that have seen a show with 2 of our hosts that have not seen a show. Pitchtown TV is when we have a special guest pitch us a show by having us watch the pilot and trying to convince us to watch the rest. If you're craving more content on some of your favorite TV shows, then you should listen to Bingetown TV. Find us on our website at bingetowntv.com, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you may find your podcast.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Matt.
So we are back. For the listeners, you'll have not noticed a thing, but it's been a couple weeks since we last talked. So once again, the previously on really helped get me caught back up on where we are in Newport. Not sure how to feel about this episode, Joe. There are like 4 different notes that I wrote this week that are just about how frustrated I am with Marissa, and that I'm like counting down the episodes for Marissa to be gone. Specifically in this episode, this is a rough ass Marissa episode. But the main focus of this episode is about colleges, getting the college acceptance letters. I have to say, this may be the worst named episode of this entire season. It's called The Day After Tomorrow. What the fuck does that have to do with literally anything that happens in this episode?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I don't get it at all. But the main focus of this episode is that I am back on the fuck Seth Cohen train for just not knowing how to handle any circumstance that comes up in his life. So the episode starts off, Summer is helping him get dressed for the cold, cold East Coast winters with a parka and some long johns. And, you know, as a person who lives on the East Coast, if I saw these 2 people walking down the street dressed like this, I would absolutely cross the street and get on the other side of the road, because I think these people are insane. No human being is wandering around in long johns and a parka, and I'm willing to bet with their no offense, Joe, I might be attacking you on this one, but with their weak ass LA attitudes,
bodies.
Yeah, that this is probably how they're dressing in like April in a nice spring day.
I have a buddy of mine who he's from Seattle. He was telling me about like the flex of owning a Canada Goose jacket. Those jackets were built to for researchers to use in the Antarctic. And you have people like walking around Seattle in these like very expensive jackets. That's kind of what the hatred and the fervor for which he was telling me that comment like over a year ago, I felt and understood completely seeing those parkas. I was like, dude, like, it's not going to be that bad.
Yeah, it's truly not. Like, you even came out here. I mean, it was March when you did Monster Mania, but like
I didn't buy anything special for it. It was
No,
perfectly fine.
it's perfectly. I there are so many people that will tell me like, oh, I could never move to where you live because of the winters, and I'm like, motherfucker, global warming's taking care of it. Like, I hate to say it like that, but we've had 2 full winters of no snow over here because like I don't know if I'll see snow again in my lifetime. That's probably not fully true, but it's going to be way less frequent.
It's gonna be in California, in Southern California, in the OC. That's where you're gonna see it.
Yeah, that's probably true. So quick confession, Joe. I don't think you know this. Currently, my show that I'm watching with my girlfriend, because we alternate between making each other watch TV shows, is Friday Night Lights, which, I mean, talk about another show that perfectly falls into the white people problems aesthetic, except that they actually have minorities on that show.
I was gonna say they actually have people of color there.
Yeah, but there is a subplot in the TV show that made me think of this as well. There is something that actively depresses me on a very real level when I watch a TV show about high schoolers who are planning to attend the same college as their boyfriend just to be close to their boyfriend. It like has such a visceral sadness that kicks into me because it's a real like, oh honey feeling that I have, because it's just like the grand scheme, like, yes, there are people who have married their high school sweethearts and it's gone great and they've lasted, 80 years being a couple, but like on average, you are not a fully developed person who knows what you want in life when you're going to college, and like you're not fully aware of what you want in life until you're like mid-20s. And to expect another human being to continue to grow on that same trajectory with you is just outrageous to think about. Also, did this feel like an extremely long cold open before we got to the fucking California song playing? This was like 4 minutes.
Yeah. I was like, are we, part of me was like, are we going to just go into the first commercial break? And we did after they played the credits 5 minutes in.
But yeah, so Seth and Summer are hoping to both attend Brown, while Marissa and Ryan are hoping for Berkeley. And what we find out is that 3 out of 4 people got what they hoped for. Summer gets accepted into Brown, and she's ecstatic. Ryan gets accepted to Berkeley, and it is a very nice moment where it's just like, part of him didn't think that was ever going to be a possibility for him. So the look on his face of like, oh my God, I actually did it, is really nice.
The way he said, I got in, like, just so good.
Marissa just throws that shit in the trash, and I got so angry. Like, I got so angry at her over that, and then Seth does not. And it's a weird fake out, I have to say, because isn't there like this unspoken rule, like large envelope equals acceptance letter, small envelope not? And he gets his rejection in a very large manila folder, which I'm like, what the fuck else is in this manila folder exactly?
I know. I was like, is it because it's Brown and it's an Ivy League that they just want to fuck you up? They're just trying to like subvert your expectations already.
So crazy. But then Seth chooses to lie and just tell everybody, including his family, that he got accepted to Brown. So they're like throwing congratulation parties for him. Summer's building his whole plan out for this, and it's like it's genuinely frustrating to watch, because you're just like, so I have a friend whose cousin had a rich family.
Okay.
And
are they not rich anymore?
They still are. But this cousin dropped out of college his freshman year and didn't tell them, and let them continue to pay tuition to this college. And the day he told them was the day of his graduation, when family members had flown in to see him graduate. And it was like one of those circumstances where, like, obviously everyone was pissed at him, but I was like, where was your end game? Like, at what point in that lie did you realize that you were fully trapped and had to commit to this? And like, I don't think Seth is realizing like there is no positive outcome to this lie. Like, there is absolutely 0 point where you confess to this lie and it makes things better. And the longer you stretch it out, the worse it's going to be. But also, did he not apply anywhere else? Did he put everything into Brown?
So this is where, like, I know, like, I'm supposed to I usually do a really good job of suspending disbelief, but
Yeah.
If I did a really good job about that, we wouldn't have a podcast, right? So, like, the thing about this that frustrates me is that as a fan of the Gilmore Girls, there's, that I think it's season 3. Yeah, season 3. They talk about, like, they're at the Thanksgiving dinner. They're just like, well, Chilton wouldn't have allowed you to just apply to one place, right? Even if you wanted to really go there. Harbor is a school where they would not have allowed you to just apply to one school.
No, not at all.
And so the fact that Seth didn't even apply to, like, San Diego State, you know what I mean? Like, didn't apply to any of that is just a wild thing. And here's the thing: when you talk about stories, in my sister's year, my sister's a year younger than me. She had one of her friends who took all the same honors AP classes, had a really strong trajectory. He only applied to one school and didn't apply to any safeties and didn't get in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, and also, like, if you and Summer are planning this whole situation, there's also the option of like Brown's not the only fucking school near there. Like, you can apply to some other New England schools where, like, you're not that far from each other and, like, plan accordingly. It's something. So I'm going to talk about one of my all-time favorite shows, Daria. Final episode of Daria was a TV movie called Is This College Yet? And the whole episode is about their senior year and them, like, applying to colleges and, like, what they get into. And, like, Daria's whole thing is, like, she applies to 2 different pretty big schools.
Sure.
And gets into one of them. And what I love about the ending is that her best friend, Jane, doesn't apply to schools. She's, like, trying to rebel against it to be an artist, and Daria convinces her to apply for, like, hey, it's not too late to apply to maybe go in the spring instead of fall. Like, like, you can show up a semester later. The storyline is that she goes to a school that's, like, an hour away from Daria's school. And that the implication is, like, we're going to have our own college experiences, but, like, once a month we can meet halfway and catch up and, like, keep that friendship alive. And it's
That's
like, I love that, right? Like, I think that is so much more powerful than, like, all the friends go to the same college and, like, their college experience is just a continuation of their high school experience. You know what I mean? Like, that's not growing. That's not what happens. Like, unless you're going to a local school, then, like, yes, that happens. I went to a local commuter campus. Sure. I saw maybe, like, 6 or 7 kids that I graduated from high school with, like, walking around campus, but I had no classes with them. I didn't really associate with them. I certainly, if there was a dorming situation, wouldn't choose to dorm with them. Yeah. Like, so just out the Seth subplot made me so angry. As did kind of the Sadie Ryan thing. Like, Sadie's acting like a little child at a certain point in this, where, like, Ryan's all excited that he got into college, and she's just like, don't tell me how perfect I am before you break up with me. And it's like, there is a difference between breaking up because you've fallen out of love with somebody and breaking up because circumstances have, like, torn you asunder. Like, it's very different. I did find her palm reading bit in the beginning a little charming when she was like, she says, like, you're going to be rich and famous one day. And he's like, oh, great. And she's like, wait a second. I'm reading your palm upside down. Whatever I just said, reverse it. And he goes, that makes more sense. Like, that to me is a very real, like, couple type of thing. Like, that's like a couple kind of picking on each other and punching down like that. I've done that with my girlfriend. I think that anybody that has had a relationship has had some type of, like, you give them a compliment and then, like, real quickly be like, oh, wait, sorry, I did that wrong. It's actually the opposite of that compliment. And you have a laugh about it or whatever.
Yeah. And I think that, like, that moment that's one of the, like, most, like, cinema verite, right? It's the most real things that I buy in the show is that moment, as well as, like, I gotta be honest, the the way that Sadie breaks up with Ryan is actually kind of beautiful and perfect.
I love it. I love because it's the opposite of what we've just been complaining about for 5 minutes. It's her realizing that he has to grow and go away to college and become his own person. And if she's there tagging him along, keeping him from going to parties and meeting new people, he's never going to get that much needed growth.
Exactly.
It almost feels like one of those things where part of you can hope that like 6 or 7 years down the line, these two people somehow reconnect as their fully formed versions of themselves and are able to like give this high school relationship an actual adult in their 20s and early 30s chance. You know what I mean? Like it's such a mature way to wrap that storyline up. I just didn't like the middle part. And I also, until Sandy had a conversation with Ryan after the fact, I also didn't like the way that they reacted to the idea that Sadie might be moving to Berkeley as well.
Sure.
But I think in my brain, like, okay, I get it when he sits down and he's like, you know, we were planning to work out the dorm situation and pay for the dorm, but if you're going to be living with her, like, that's a whole different situation. And like, you also lose your meal plan from that. So like, you're going to have to get a job. But in my brain, I'm also like, well, this lady's got a small apartment here that she lives in by herself. Why the fuck couldn't she find a small apartment in Berkeley, which I imagine would be cheaper than the Newport Beach apartment that she's paying for?
Especially at that time, right? Like the tech boom hadn't started yet. So like, you know, in the world of the show and like the world of actually living in Berkeley, Bay Area, San Francisco, like it's totally possible for her to do that. But like just part of me was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. I kind of want to like copy and paste this so that way we can send it to anybody who's going through the same situation. Yeah. and Ryan's not, to the credit of the writers, but like Ryan as the character is not like making her feel unwelcome by any means, right? Like,
no, I love that he checks in with her at the party and is like, hey, do you want to go? I know this isn't your scene. I know being surrounded by people you don't know is like an
sure.
This is mostly because he's not dealing with all the drama that Marissa brings to the table, the most loving and mature relationship we've ever seen Ryan actually in.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. I will say, top tier circumstance here was this episode may have had the best Julie Cooper moment where she just talks to Marissa and Marissa's like, I don't feel like I'm good enough for Berkeley, and Julie gives her a really good, powerful pep talk about like, no, you're gonna be okay with this. Like, don't guarantee your failure by believing that you're a failure. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's a really good, and I wrote, this is a top tier Julie Cooper sequence. Really a bummer that I'm sure Marissa's going to blow it anyway.
Well, yeah, because she dies. Like,
because she dies, but
she's going to blow it because she dies.
Listen, Marissa makes a lot of decisions, I'm sure, that are going to lead her down that path of death. I don't think it's just like everything's working out and she has an unexpected heart attack at graduation or something.
Yeah, they're not going to Caleb her, right? They're not going to just like,
a person who I know a lot of people hate, and I've brought it up time and time again. I like Taylor so much. I like her so much in this episode. Her like speaking what I don't know what type of food she's picking up, but she just like knows whatever language it is that she's picking up, speaks it fluently, gives this absolute psychotic gorilla analogy to try to explain to Marissa.
Oh, it's Korean. She's speaking Korean.
Yeah, she's speaking Korean. And then she's talking to Marissa, to Summer. She's talking to Summer about the Seth situation. And she makes this gorilla analogy where she's like, look, gorillas, they're out in the wood, like a silverback gorilla. It's out in the wood. It's doing its thing. And like, it thinks that it's fun being independent. But you and I both know it'd be much happier in a zoo with a regular feeding schedule. But you just really got to get that trank dart in it. And it's like such a psychotic analogy for everything. And it's like wrong. Like, she's absolutely incorrect.
Yeah.
But it's so charming how much she truly believes what she's saying in that moment I love her character so much.
This is what the kids today would call Taylor is fully Delulu in that moment.
Yeah. But I love her friendship with Summer that we see in this episode and we see in next week's episode. Like, I actually think she's a good friend for Summer because she's like super supportive, but also like doesn't hold back on circumstances too. But let me tell you the funniest line possibly in OC history.
Sure.
Is when Marissa and Summer are finally starting to talk again. And Marissa asks Summer about what's happening with Seth. And Summer says, do you remember when the guys made us watch that movie about the gay guys on the mountain? And Marissa says, Lord of the Rings? And she goes, yeah, the character of Gollum. And I was like, that setup is perfection.
Yeah.
Like that is so well structured in me. Like, as I'm just like, oh yeah, Brokeback Mountain. And like when Marissa says Lord of the Rings, and then Summer confirms that is the movie that she was referring to and starts talking about Gollum, I literally laughed out loud, and I cannot remember the last time that a joke in the OC made me actually audibly make a noise. Like,
it was perfect. And I knew it was coming too. I was like, I know it's not Brokeback Mountain. I know they're not going to say Brokeback Mountain. But it's like Lord of the Rings. And because like true, right? Like you can't tell me that like Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, well, especially that last movie, like when he's literally carrying Bilbo on his shoulders up the mountain. Like Frodo. Sorry, yes. So, oh my God, the nerds will really come at me on that one.
You know, you won't be able to Geekscape that.
No.
What's up, everybody? This is Brian here to tell you about our podcast, Bingetown TV. Our hosts include 7 best friends with a love for all things television. We cover a range of genres with a focus on fantasy and sci-fi, but also dip our feet into drama, horror, comedy, and pretty much anything we think is good television. We use the traditional deep dive formula for new live shows that are released week to week, but our calling card is our Rooks and Vets and Pitchtown TV series. Rooks and Vets pairs 2 of our hosts that have seen a show with 2 of our hosts that have not seen a show. Pitchtown TV is when we have a special guest pitch us a show by having us watch the pilot and trying to convince us to watch the rest. If you're craving more content on some of your favorite TV shows, then you should listen to Bingetown TV. Find us on our website at bingetowntv.com, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you may find your podcast.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
91 Donkey Lane is a magical apartment complex that contains immense power, but lacks intelligent inhabitants.
What is happening?
I'm getting texts.
Why are we getting a lot of texts?
People found out what we did.
Oh, dividing Mike Myers into an infinite amount of tiny Mike Myers?
Listen to 91 Donkey Lane for free on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. More at 91donkeylane.com. See you there, you donkeys.
The last thing I wrote down that I want to mention, and I just want to mention this note and move on from it, is God, this entire Newport group story is stupid. And you had told me a long ass time ago that you're like, oh my God, the Sandy Newport group is the fucking worst. And we're seeing that still be the case up until this point. We're going to dive into that way more next week, but this week they're just laying the breadcrumbs and it's causing a relationship rift already with Sandy and Kirsten. So not my favorite, but we did get some pretty decent songs this episode. Tally Hall's Good Day plays a couple times in the episode. It kicks off the episode and it plays when they're getting their acceptance letters. True Love, The Crime plays when the party celebrating their college acceptance plays. Chris Holmes' China plays when Sadie leaves the Coens party embarrassed. Dopayama, The Secret Shot plays when they're having the harbor party, and the episode ends with a live version of the song Fog by Radiohead. Cliche as it is to pick the song that shows up multiple times, but even just when I heard the opening notes of this Tally Hall song, I thought, I like this song. Like, I've never heard it before, but I was like, this song's kind of dope. And I added it to a playlist, so I have to put it as my song of the week.
It's my song of the week, too.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just a good one.
It's really good, and like you said, even though it shows up multiple times, I love that the OC basically is using pop songs as leitmotif music.
Yeah.
Right? And like, oh, we know how to feel when we hear this song now. I know exactly because it's like when they do, and I love when they do it in Chrismukkah episodes with maybe this Christmas and bring something more, and like that, that guitar riff in it. I'm like, this is the OC at peak OC.
Peak OC. That's what we should have named this podcast. Joe, when the OC was on television, boy howdy was it ever just a juggernaut of television. And I like to make sure that we're sharing other things that we think either are or should be juggernauts. I'm going with an obscure ass movie that I want to very quickly talk about. Have you ever heard of Dave Made a Maze?
No.
Okay. So I believe it was on Amazon Prime. Hopefully it's still there. Dave Made a Maze is a very strange movie with almost no like major noteworthy names. And it was shot on a very small budget, and it's an absolute delight. And it's about a guy named Dave who, when left alone for the weekend, gets a refrigerator box and builds a little labyrinth inside this refrigerator box. And the movie starts with his girlfriend coming home from the weekend, and Dave is inside the box, but he won't come out because he says he's lost in the labyrinth. And she's looking at this tiny refrigerator box on the ground and is like, whatever. And then he keeps insisting, don't come in here. I've made this too well. And then finally her and a bunch of friends go inside the box, and it literally is like a Wizard of Oz type circumstance where when they walk into this cardboard box, it is much bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And they can fully stand up, and it is this crazy labyrinth with like a minotaur and booby traps and all types of crazy shit. But everything's made out of cardboard. Every element of the movie and the set is fully built out of cardboard that the director collected and built these rooms with to make it seem authentic. And it has this fun element of like when people die, there's no blood. It's like they explode into confetti and silly string. Like, it's just very over the top and fantastical. But every second of it, I was like, this is so visually cool. And the director, I read an interview afterwards because I was just like, I need to know more about this movie. Basically said that they collected enough cardboard to build one room. So they would build that room and film everything that they needed in that room, and then would tear it down and reuse the cardboard to build the next room. And it was just a single room with a bunch of cardboard that they would recreate to look like all of these different parts of the labyrinth with these actors. And it's one of the most interesting and unique independent films I've ever seen. So it came out in like 2017. Absolutely worth checking out. It's like a brisk, like 75, 80 minutes. So definitely highly recommend that. But Joe, how about you? What pop culture have you been diving into?
Well, it wasn't without its controversy this year, but I did get caught up on the grand final of the Eurovision Song Contest.
Oh, you do love the Eurovision Song Contest.
I do love the Eurovision Song. And I love the Eurovision Song.
I didn't know that there was a controversy. Please inform me. Teach me.
Well, the controversy is that like Israel participates in the Eurovision Song Contest. And so a lot of artists, there were some artists that protested, and one was disqualified. The Netherlands were disqualified due in part to the protest, but mainly is that like the Eurovision has kind of come under scrutiny because it is like vehemently an apolitical event. Which is fascinating because I feel like so many people hint at or call attention to different social issues. So like it's really, and also because like Ukraine won a few years ago, right when the war was going on, and Russia still participated as well, I believe, that year. But like, so people have feelings about that and Israel's participation in Eurovision. Rightly so, entirely valid, the critique of that as well.
Yeah.
I will say that, like, I didn't watch live. One of the things that I love about watching live, and I started watching Eurovision back in 2021, and mainly because I saw that Johnny Weir was hosting, and I love just Johnny Weir as an announcer. I think he's really fun. And he's a huge Eurovision fan. His like family has they do their own scoring and ballots the way that people would do for like fantasy baseball. But this year was so like, it was good in terms of like, you know, all the performances are really good. Nothing really leapt out at me like last year or the year before. I'm always looking for a good poppy dancey hit, and I did get some of that. The one thing I will say is that the person who won, Nemo, Switzerland won, from Switzerland, their song, The Code, is like this like song about basically discovering their non-binariness. And I think that's a huge win for like non-binary representation specifically. The fact that like this song about a very specific experience from a Swiss rapper pop artist like won the Eurovision Song Contest finals. It was a fun one. Definitely, folks, like my picks. I love Norway. I actually really like Latvia. From Eurovision this year. And if you want to understand the like breadth of the kind of wild performances and music you get at Eurovision, watch Ireland and then watch I think it's Australia. So yeah, that was it.
All right, I'll have to check those out. Joe, it was another drama-filled day at Newport Beach, but maybe next week it'll be completely free of drama. Maybe.
What's up, everybody? This is Brian here to tell you about our podcast, Bingetown TV. Our hosts include 7 best friends with a love for all things television. We cover a range of genres with a focus on fantasy and sci-fi, but also dip our feet into drama, horror, comedy, and pretty much anything we think is good television. We use the traditional deep dive formula for new live shows that are released week to week, but our calling card is our Rooks and Vets and Pitchtown TV series. Rooks and Vets pairs 2 of our hosts that have seen a show with 2 of our hosts that have not seen a show. Pitchtown TV is when we have a special guest pitch us a show by having us watch the pilot and trying to convince us to watch the rest. If you're craving more content on some of your favorite TV shows, then you should listen to Bingetown TV. Find us on our website at bingetowntv.com, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you may find your podcast.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.